My name is Elias Morgan, 36 years old. The ocean outside my window has a rhythm, calm, repetitive, almost deceptive. People think peace looks like waves and sunsets, but peace, I've learned, only exists when you guard it like a fortress. 6 months ago, I bought my dream house in Malibu, a modern glass and wood place perched above the cliffs, the kind of house I used to drive by during residency and tell myself, someday. 15 years of surgeries, overnight shifts, missed holidays, and endless bills had led here. Every tile, every pane of glass was paid for by my own hands. But my family doesn't see it that way. They see my house as ours. My father likes to say, family doesn't need permission. He built a real estate business from nothing and thinks his word still carries ownership over everything we touch. My mother never argues. She just smooths over his pride like polishing old silver. My younger brother Jason, 28, calls himself a crypto entrepreneur, though most of his projects dissolve into thin air. And my sister Melissa, 33, newly divorced with 2 kids, carries her chaos like perfume. Every Sunday, dinner at my parents' Beverly Hills mansion is mandatory. Missing it means a week of guilt from my mother and lectures from my father about family unity. Last Sunday, the moment I walked in, I sensed something was off. That subtle, loaded silence before a storm. Melissa sat across from me, smiling too much. My mother avoided my eyes. Jason scrolled through his phone, pretending not to notice. My father was already talking about his latest commercial deal, voice loud enough to fill the dining room. Then, right when my mother brought out the roast, Melissa cleared her throat. So, there's a small issue at my apartment, she said, her tone sweet and apologetic. The landlord says the plumbing needs a full redo, maybe a week or 2 of work. The kids and I just need somewhere to stay in the meantime. Her 2 children, sitting beside her, immediately argued over who would get the room with the ocean view. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a spontaneous comment. She had told them already. This wasn't a request. It was an announcement. I looked at my mother. She kept her gaze fixed on the tablecloth, tracing invisible circles on the embroidery. She knew. She just didn't have the courage to warn me. Jason finally looked up from his phone, glanced at Melissa, then at me. No words, but I could read his eyes. Don't make it a scene. I took a slow sip of water and said quietly, actually, that won't work. Melissa blinked. Why not? I have major renovations starting next week, I said, reaching into my briefcase and pulling out a folder I hadn't meant to use for this. Contractors. Full remodel. The house won't be livable for months. The table went still. My father's fork hit the plate. His face darkened. You're going to disrespect your sister like this? She needs help. I met his gaze calmly. I'm helping. By not letting her move into a construction site, it's unsafe for the kids. Melissa's voice hardened. You never mentioned renovations before, Elias. Not once. I don't need to mention my private plans for my own property, I replied, and nobody has the right to move into someone else's house without asking. You're unbelievable, she hissed. You've changed. I've grown boundaries, I said softly. My father slammed his hand on the table. You sound just like those cold, selfish people who forget where they come from. Family made you who you are. And family, I said, keeps trying to unmake me. The silence after that was like a slap. My mother's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. Jason looked at his plate as if it were the most fascinating object in the world. I pushed back my chair. Dinner was great. Thank you, Mom. I walked out before anyone could stop me. My father's voice followed me down the hall. Barked, You're just like your mother's brother. Ungrateful. The night air outside was cold. I got into my car and drove the long road back to Malibu. Each mile between me and that house felt like a breath of oxygen after years underwater. When I finally arrived, the ocean wind was sharp and wild. The house glowed softly under the moonlight. Mine. Finally mine. I stood by the panoramic window, the waves reflecting in the glass, and thought about Melissa's confident smile, my father's rage, my mother's silence. For 36 years, I had played the part of the reliable son, the one who says yes, who fixes things, who absorbs everyone's chaos and calls it duty. But not this time. This time, I would protect what was mine. Not just a house, but peace. I picked up my phone and called a locksmith. Can you come early tomorrow? I asked. Change every lock, including the side gates. Then I called a security company and booked a full system installation. Cameras, alarms, access control linked to my phone. When I hung up, I felt something shift inside me, the faint electric thrill of rebellion. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, listening to the waves crash against the rocks. The reflection of the ocean shimmered across the walls like a living heartbeat. They'll come anyway, I thought. They always do. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the fight. By morning, no one would have a key to my life but me. The morning air in Malibu carries a kind of quiet that can trick you into believing you're safe. But I wasn't fooled. I woke up before dawn, watched the horizon turn from gray to gold, and waited for the sound of engines. By 7, the locksmith arrived, a wiry man with sunburned arms and a smile that said he'd seen everything. "Whole property?" he asked, glancing at the ocean. "Every door, every gate," I replied. "Nobody except me gets in." He nodded. "Sounds like you've got family problems." I didn't answer. By 8, the locks were changed. The metallic click of new keys felt like punctuation, the end of one chapter, the start of another. The security company showed up right after. Uniformed technicians, cables, motion sensors, cameras at every angle. When they were done, the place looked like a fortress disguised as a beach house. I brewed coffee, poured it into my favorite ceramic mug, a gift from my first patient who ever walked again after spine surgery. The mug had a crack down the side, repaired with golden resin, kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken things with gold. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was halfway through my coffee when I heard the rumble. A moving truck pulled up to the gate. My stomach tightened, not in fear, in prediction. Through the security monitor, I saw her, Melissa, wearing oversized sunglasses, hair tied back too neatly, the practiced look of someone trying to appear in control. Her kids were in the back seat of her car, faces pressed to the windows, pointing excitedly toward the ocean. Behind her, the movers got out and stretched, ready to unload. The truck's side panel read Coastal Movers in bright blue letters. She'd hired professionals. I hit the intercom. "Melissa." My voice sounded steady. "You shouldn't be here." Her reply was instant, brittle. "Oh, spare me. The kids need a place to stay. Open the gate." "I told you last night. Renovations start today. It's not safe." "Elias, don't lie. You don't even have contractors there." I glanced at the half-unpacked boxes of tools from the security crew still visible through the doorway. "Looks pretty active to me." Her voice rose an octave. "Open the damn gate, Elias. We have nowhere else to go." "That's not my problem," I said quietly. "You made assumptions. You never asked." "Unbelievable. I'm your sister." "And this," I said, pressing the gate control, "is my house." The gate stayed shut. She slammed her car door and barked orders to the movers. "Unload everything right here on the driveway. We'll figure it out later." I watched from the security feed as couches, boxes, toys, and suitcases began piling up against the gate. It was surreal, like watching someone dump their life at my doorstep. Then, in the middle of it, Melissa's youngest, Oliver, 6 years old, pressed his palms to the bars and looked up at the camera. "Uncle Eli," he said, voice small and trembling through the intercom mic. "Can we still visit the beach?" I swallowed hard. "Not today, buddy." He nodded solemnly, as if he understood something deeper than any adult could. When Melissa finally stepped back from the chaos, I called a number I'd saved the night before. "Home for a hero?" I said when the woman answered. "Yes, I have a donation. Furniture and household goods. Everything's in excellent condition. The owners abandoned it." Her tone was calm and professional. "We can send a van within the hour." "Perfect." 40 minutes later, a white van pulled up. The driver, a kind-faced woman named Carol, looked at the pile and raised an eyebrow. "All this?" "Yes," I said, "all of it." She nodded. "We'll handle it." The movers from the charity began loading Melissa's belongings. 10 minutes later, Melissa came back. She'd gone to pick up lunch for the kids. When she saw what was happening, she froze. "What the hell are you doing?" she screamed. "That's my stuff." I pressed the intercom again, voice even. "It was left on my property. Under California law, I have the right to dispose of abandoned items. I'm donating them." Her face turned crimson. "You're insane. That's theft." "Call the police," I said simply. "They'll tell you the same thing." Melissa started shouting obscenities, the kind of words that make children cry. Her kids hid behind her car. The movers looked uncomfortable but kept working. Within an hour, the driveway was empty. Carol from Home for a Hero gave me a polite nod and assigned a donation receipt. "You did the right thing," she said quietly before leaving. I wasn't sure about that, but I knew it was necessary. Melissa stood at the gate, shaking. "You're a monster," she spat. "You'll regret this." "I already regret most of my life, Melissa," I said softly, "but not this." She got into her car, tires screeching as she sped away. I went back inside. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. My mother. Elias, what have you done? Her voice trembled. Melissa called me sobbing. She said you stole all her belongings. I donated abandoned property, I replied. There's a difference. How could you be so cruel? She's your sister. She needed to respect my boundaries. She didn't. Your father is furious. He says, I know what he says, Mom. Please, she whispered. Fix this. Apologize. Let them stay, just for a few weeks. No, she hesitated. If you hang up now, your father will never forgive you. I'll survive. There was a silence so long I could hear the waves again through the open window. Then, quietly, she said, You sound just like your grandfather. The line went dead. I knew what was coming next. Not 5 minutes later, my phone lit up again. My father. His voice was cold, clipped, rehearsed. You've disgraced this family, Elias. I'm cutting you out of my will. I almost laughed. You already did that, Dad. Remember last year when I refused to fund Jason's crypto scheme? You said the same thing then. This is different. No, I said. It's exactly the same. You confuse loyalty with obedience. You think you're better than us now, is that it? No, I just think I'm done being your backup plan. He hung up without another word. I stood by the window, the ocean stretching endlessly before me, waves rolling in slow and certain. Outside, the driveway was spotless. Not a trace of Melissa's belongings remained. Inside, the silence was absolute, sharp, unfamiliar, and beautiful. The silence after war always feels heavier than the battle itself. That's what the house sounded like now. Too quiet, like even the sea outside was holding its breath. For days, I moved through my routines automatically. I went to the hospital, performed surgeries, smiled at patients, and came home to a fortress of glass and steel. Every night, the same thought followed me to bed. Did I go too far? But every morning, when I woke up to sunlight and stillness instead of someone else's demands, I knew the answer. No, I hadn't gone far enough. Then came the calls. Melissa's number appeared on my screen first, over and over, sometimes 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. The voicemails came next. Cries, accusations, guilt. Then her texts, pages of venom and self-pity mixed together. I blocked her. My mother called daily. Her tone swung between pleading and scolding. Your father isn't sleeping. He says he doesn't recognize you anymore. Maybe he's finally seeing me for who I really am, I said. She sighed. Elias, boundaries are one thing, but you've humiliated your sister. The neighbors are probably still laughing, I interrupted. Let them. I've been everyone's doormat long enough. Then, late one night, a different number called. Unknown. But the voice that answered was unmistakable. You've become unrecognizable, my father said. You've lost all sense of family honor. Honor? I repeated. Is that what you call it when you let Jason bleed you dry and Melissa use guilt as currency? He exhaled sharply. You're bitter. That's your problem. I'm free, I said. He paused, then, you're out of the will. Permanently. Don't call this family again. I wanted to laugh, but the sound that came out was somewhere between relief and exhaustion. Dad, you already did that last year when I wouldn't co-sign Jason's crypto disaster. Silence. You remember, right? I continued. You called it the next digital empire. Jason lost your money, your friend's money. You blamed me for not saving him. I chose reason over fantasy, and that made me the villain. That was different, he snapped. No, I said quietly. It was exactly the same. You want obedience, not respect. He hung up. I poured a glass of whiskey and sat by the open window. Outside, the moonlight stretched across the ocean like a silver wound. Sometimes peace costs blood. Not literal, but the kind that runs through family lines. The next day at work, I stood in the OR, hands steady over the incision, and felt something odd. Calm. For years, I had been carrying other people's noise inside me. Now, for once, there was none. But peace, as always, was temporary. When I returned home that evening, a voicemail was waiting on my landline, a number from the LAPD. My pulse spiked, but I already knew why. Mr. Morgan, the officer's voice said politely, we've received a report of alleged theft from a Ms. Melissa Carter. We'd like to discuss the matter with you. I almost smiled. She'd gone there. The officer came the next day, a tired man in uniform who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I offered him coffee. He declined, glanced around my immaculate living room, and asked, Did you remove her belongings from the driveway? I donated abandoned property, I said evenly. Everything was left outside my locked gate. The movers unloaded it, then left. I have video. He watched the footage silently, Melissa shouting, movers unloading, her car driving off. He sighed. Ma'am, Sorry, sir. This looks like a civil matter, not criminal. Your sister can try small claims if she wants, but you're within your rights. Thank you, officer. He hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, he said, families are the hardest ones to fight. They never play fair. I know, I said. That's why I stopped playing. That night, my phone lit up again, this time with messages from Jason. Bro, what the hell did you do? Dad's furious. You could have just let her stay for a week. I didn't respond. A final text appeared. You're going to regret this. Foreshadowing, if I'd ever heard it. The days turned into weeks. I buried myself in work, in the precision of bone and muscle, in the science of fixing what's broken. At night, I walked the beach barefoot under the moonlight, listening to the sound of the surf drown out my thoughts. I started noticing things I'd ignored before, the smell of salt in the wind, the way light shifted on the waves, the quiet hum of the house settling after sundown. That was when I realized something terrifyingly simple. I'd spent my entire adult life saving other people, but never once saved myself. I made a vow then, not just to protect my home, but to protect the part of me that finally refused to be taken. Still, there was an emptiness that came with it. Freedom can be lonely. One evening, as I stood on the deck watching the sunset, I thought of Oliver's small voice through the intercom. Uncle Eli, can we still visit the beach? The memory hit harder than I expected. The kids weren't guilty of anything. They were just collateral damage in their mother's endless performance. For a moment, I considered calling Melissa just to check on them, but I didn't. I knew how that would end. The ocean wind picked up cold against my face. Inside, the new security system chimed softly, motion detected near the front gate. I checked the monitor. A car had stopped briefly, then pulled away. No license plate visible, but I didn't need one. I knew who it was. Melissa was watching. And if I'd learned anything from surgery, it was this. What returns quietly is often the most dangerous. Rumors spread faster than truth, especially when they start at a dinner table and end up on the internet. A week after the police closed her report, Melissa changed her strategy. She wasn't going to fight me in court. She was going to fight me in public. I found out the way everyone does, through whispers first. My mother called one morning, voice trembling. Your sister called a family meeting last night, she said. Your father, Jason, even Aunt Nora was there. She showed photos. Photos of what? Her apartment. Mold, broken pipes, flooding. She said you lied about renovations, so she'd have nowhere to go. I closed my eyes. Her apartment's fine, Mom. You've been there. I know, but she had proof, pictures, videos. She's good with filters, I said flatly. My mother hesitated. Your father said we need to support her, that you've become unpredictable. Of course he did. In our family, the one who finally says no always gets labeled unstable. The next blow came from social media. I wasn't tagged by name, but I didn't have to be. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot of Melissa's post. Some people forget what blood means when money blinds them. Imagine leaving your own sister and her kids homeless because your career made you think you're better than everyone. Some houses are built with walls. Some hearts are too. Below it, a photo of the ocean. My ocean. My house faintly visible on the cliff in the background. Comments poured in. Stay strong, girl. You deserve better. Some people don't know loyalty until it's too late. Hundreds of them. Some from people I hadn't seen since med school. Others from relatives I barely remembered. I stared at the screen, pulse steady. Then I closed the app and put my phone face down. I wouldn't play her game, not publicly. But silence, as I learned, can sound a lot like guilt to people looking for drama. 2 days later, at the hospital cafeteria, one of my colleagues, Dr. Laird, a sharp, kind anesthesiologist, slid into the seat across from me. So, he said lightly, you really donate your sister's stuff to charity? The words hit harder than he intended. You read that? Everyone did, he said carefully. It's all over Facebook. Someone even mentioned it on a local community page. Look, I'm not judging. Just maybe take legal advice before this snowballs. I gave a humorless smile. Already did. He paused, lowering his voice. People love villains more than victims, especially when the villain doesn't defend himself. I knew he was right, but defending myself would mean acknowledging her version, and that was exactly what she wanted, attention. I threw away the rest of my lunch and left. That weekend, things escalated. It started with a knock on my neighbor's door, then another. By Sunday, half the cul-de-sac had heard some version of the story. Your sister came by, my neighbor Claire told me while watering her plants. Said you've been under a lot of stress since your divorce, that you're not yourself lately. I frowned. I've never been married. She looked startled. Oh, she must have meant something else. Of course she did. By Monday, I started noticing unfamiliar cars parked near the gate. Once, someone took photos of my property from across the road. Another time, a pair of teenagers walked past holding signs. At first, I thought it was coincidence, until I saw the signs clearly. Blood over money. Greed destroys families. Melissa had organized a protest. A protest. I almost admired her dedication to performance art. There were maybe 8 people, half of them bored, one of them clearly hired from a gig website. They stood outside my gate, shouting slogans they barely believed in. I watched from the upstairs balcony, invisible behind tinted glass. The security camera zoomed in on one of the signs. Shame on Elias Morgan. So much for anonymity. I let them chant for half an hour. Then I called my lawyer, Ava Lee, a woman whose calm made Storms nervous. She listened quietly, then said, "I'll handle it." By evening, a cease and desist letter had been sent. The next day, the signs were gone. But so was whatever thin thread connected my sister to sanity. That night, my father called. His voice was lower than usual, slower, like he was tired of being angry. "Melissa's gone too far," he said. "You were right to set limits." I froze. It was the first time those words had ever left his mouth. "She's still your daughter," I said. "You don't have to choose." He exhaled. "Maybe I should have chosen sooner. I raised children who think love is entitlement. Maybe that's my failure." I didn't know how to respond. For years, I'd fantasized about him admitting he was wrong. But now that it was happening, it just made me sad. "Dad," I said quietly, "you built a business out of control. Maybe you don't know what love without control looks like." He didn't answer, but he didn't hang up either. The next morning, my mother called again. "She's stopped posting," she said. "Your father told her she could get into legal trouble for defamation. Maybe this is over." I looked at the ocean outside, calm, endless, deceitfully peaceful. "No," I said softly, "Melissa never ends things. She waits." And I was right, because peace never lasts in families like ours. It only pauses long enough for the next war to reload. Weeks passed without a word from Melissa. No calls, no posts, no staged sympathy. Just silence. And silence in my family never meant peace. It meant someone was planning. Still, I tried to believe it was over. The beach outside my house shimmered with morning light again, the waves rolling in slow and steady. I started sleeping through the night. I returned to jogging at dawn, scrubbing salt air into my lungs until I could almost forget her voice. At work, colleagues stopped whispering. Patients smiled. My hands, for once, weren't trembling from anger. But when I drove home each evening, I still checked my rearview mirror. Every time a car slowed near my gate, my pulse jumped. Trauma doesn't need blood to feel real. It lives in the body like a reflex. One Friday afternoon, while reviewing post-op scans in my office, I received a message from an unknown number. "You won, Big Brother. Enjoy your castle. Some of us are still sleeping on borrowed floors." Melissa. I deleted it. But later that night, when I looked out from my terrace, I saw a figure down on the public beach, too far to recognize but familiar in posture, arms crossed, watching the house. She stayed there until the tide came in and erased her footprints. Saturday morning, I decided to take control of my story. Not publicly, not online, just privately. I met my lawyer, Ava, at a small cafe overlooking the Pacific Coast Highway. She listened as I talked, not just about the harassment or the rumors, but the exhaustion, the guilt, the way being right could still feel wrong when it came to family. When I finished, she stirred her coffee and said, "You have 2 choices. You can sue her for defamation and keep her in your life through courtrooms for the next 2 years, or you can disappear from her narrative completely." "Disappear?" I asked. "Block her. Don't respond. Don't defend yourself. Starve the fire of oxygen." I stared at the sea beyond the cafe window. "That sounds like losing." "It's not losing," she said. "It's choosing peace over victory." Her words settled deep. I realized peace wasn't quiet. It was a decision you had to make daily, sometimes against your own anger. I followed her advice. I blocked every number that could reach me. I even told my mother gently, "If you bring her up, I'll hang up." The first few days, my mother cried. Then she stopped. My father never mentioned it again. Jason, though, went silent in a different way, which I knew meant danger. My brother only went quiet when he was calculating. 2 months later, the renovations I had lied about finally became real. I hired contractors, tore down the old deck, rebuilt the kitchen, knocked out the narrow hallway that had always bothered me. The house became a construction zone for 6 months, Loud, messy, expensive, but healing. There was something poetic about the hammering. Destruction before restoration. Each nail that hit wood felt like reclaiming space inside myself. During that time, I learned something else. I missed nobody. No unexpected visits, no guilt trips, no late-night calls demanding help. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was freedom with walls. Half a year later, the house was finally finished. The new terrace stretched into the horizon. The kitchen gleamed with marble and glass, and every corner smelled of cedar and fresh paint. I sent one message, just one, to my parents. The renovation's done. Come see it when you can. My father didn't reply right away. 3 days later, he called. His voice was subdued. Your mother says the house looks beautiful in the photos you sent. You'll see for yourself, I said. He hesitated. You know, I might have been wrong. Those words hit me harder than all his past threats. About what? I asked. About family, he said. About control. You didn't betray us, Elias. You just grew up faster than the rest of us did. I didn't know what to say. The old me would have waited his entire life to hear those words. The new me just nodded silently, letting the moment exist without dissecting it. When they came to visit that weekend, the sky was clear, the air almost too still. My mother brought flowers, white lilies, her favorite. My father walked through the house slowly, touching walls, studying details. The view's better than I remembered, he said, standing before the massive glass windows overlooking the sea. I smiled faintly. It's the same view, Dad. You're just looking at it differently. He gave a small nod, one that, for him, meant 100 unspoken apologies. We had dinner on the terrace that night. My mother laughed for the first time in months. The conversation was light, almost ordinary, and that was what made it extraordinary. For the first time, my family felt like people, not obligations. As the sun dipped below the ocean line, painting the sky in gold and fire, my father leaned back in his chair. You were right, he said quietly, about boundaries, about respect. My mother reached for his hand. Families grow, Arthur. So do houses. Sometimes you just have to rebuild. I looked at them, the man who'd tried to control me and the woman who'd spent her life keeping him calm. And for the first time, I felt something close to forgiveness. Not because they'd changed, but because I finally had. That night, after they left, the house was silent again, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt whole, the kind of silence you earn, the kind that stays. The house had changed, not just its walls or its windows, but its pulse. I could feel it the moment I woke up that morning, a lightness in the air, the hum of something calm and alive. My parents were coming to visit again, this time without pretense or obligation. No lectures, no guilt, just curiosity. I spent the morning walking through every room, opening windows to let the ocean breeze in. The scent of salt and pine drifted through the halls. The renovations had made the house brighter. Softer edges, open space, a feeling of honesty in its architecture. It was everything I wanted, simple, quiet, mine. By noon, their car pulled up. For once, I didn't feel the usual knot in my chest when I heard the tires on the gravel driveway. My mother stepped out first, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. My father followed, wearing a linen shirt I'd never seen him in before, casual, almost vulnerable. Welcome, I said, meaning it. They entered slowly, looking around like tourists. My mother ran her hand along the marble counter, smiling. This feels peaceful. My father didn't speak at first. He just walked, from the kitchen to the terrace to the master suite to the infinity pool that seemed to pour into the horizon. Every step was deliberate, like he was measuring not just the space, but what it had cost me to defend it. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. You did all this yourself? I nodded. Every design, every payment, every sleepless night. He exhaled, a long, shaky breath that sounded like letting go. I was wrong. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is the only way to honor words you've waited a lifetime to hear. We sat on the terrace as the sun began to fall. My mother talked about small things, her garden, a new neighbor, how Jason hadn't been calling much lately. My father stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Finally, he said, You know, Elias, when I was your age, I thought success meant control, over people, over family, over life itself. I built everything from the ground up, and I thought that gave me the right to tell everyone else how to live. I watched the light fade from the sky, streaks of orange dissolving into blue. I thought that's what love was, he continued, making people follow my version of what's best. But you've shown me something else. You didn't fight us to win. You fought to be free. For a moment, I saw him differently. Not as the immovable man who'd ruled our lives, but as someone finally realizing how much of his love had been possession disguised as care. My mother's eyes glistened. She reached across the table, took his hand, and whispered, "That's growth, Arthur." He gave a small laugh. Took me long enough. We had dinner on the terrace, just like old times, but stripped of tension. My mother's laughter blended with the sound of the sea. Even my father smiled, a real smile, one that softened the lines of age and pride. At one point, my mother turned to me and said, "You know, when you were little, you used to build forts in the living room. You'd get angry if anyone tried to come in without knocking. I should have known then you'd grow up to value your space." I chuckled. I guess I always wanted walls I could trust. She nodded, her smile bittersweet. Now you have them. After dinner, my father lingered as my mother packed up the leftovers. The sky outside was almost dark now, the ocean barely visible under a blanket of silver moonlight. He cleared his throat. "Your sister's still upset. She won't talk to your mother, but she's struggling, Elias." "I know," I said quietly. "She blames herself sometimes," he continued, "but she also blames you. It's complicated. Family always is." He studied me for a moment, then said, "You don't have to forgive her, but don't carry hate. It's heavier than you think." I met his gaze. "I don't hate her, Dad. I just finally stopped rescuing her." He nodded slowly, as if that was an answer he could respect. Before they left, he paused at the front door. "You earned this house," he said, looking around one last time. "But more than that, you earned yourself." I didn't expect the warmth that rose in my chest. For years, I'd wanted his approval. Tonight, I realized I didn't need it, but it still felt good to receive. After they drove away, I stood on the terrace, barefoot, watching their taillights vanish down the winding road. The sea below roared like applause. For the first time, my past didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a scar, proof of healing. Inside, the house hummed softly, lights glowing, waves echoing faintly through open windows. I poured a glass of wine and whispered to the quiet, "We made it." And the silence, warm and steady, seemed to whisper back. 3 days after my parents' visit, I found a small box on my doorstep. No note, no name, just a bottle of 20-year-old Glenfiddich inside. I didn't need a card to know who sent it. Jason. My brother had always believed expensive gestures could patch over deep cracks. That evening, just as the sun started melting into the ocean, I heard a familiar knock. 2 short, 1 long. The rhythm of our childhood. I opened the door. Jason stood there in a linen shirt, sunglasses perched on his head, holding another bottle of whiskey. "The good stuff," he said with a grin that tried too hard. "Can I come in?" I hesitated for a beat, then stepped aside. "Sure." He whistled as he entered, scanning the open living room. "Wow, this place looks incredible. You really went all out." "Renovations are finished," I said. He smirked. "Yeah, Dad wouldn't shut up about it. Said you did the right thing." I raised an eyebrow. That must have hurt to admit. Jason chuckled, setting the bottle on the counter. "You know him. He pretends it's logic, but it's pride. You beat him at his own game." I wasn't playing. "Exactly," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "That's why you won." We sat out on the terrace, the same place I'd shared dinner with my parents just nights before. The air was cool, the waves rhythmic. For a few minutes, it almost felt like old times, before money and failure poisoned everything between us. He lifted his glass. "I'm to family," he said. I clinked mine gently against his. "To survival." He laughed. Still dramatic. Then his tone shifted. "Listen, I wanted to talk about something serious." "Here it comes." He leaned forward, lowering his voice like we were plotting a secret. "I've been working on something. A new project. Real potential this time. Not like the old ones. We're building a decentralized medical data platform. Think blockchain for patient records." "Jason!" "Wait, hear me out. It's legit. I've got developers, an investor from Singapore, even a prototype. But I need someone credible, a partner the industry respects, a doctor, someone like you." I let out a breath through my nose. "No." He blinked. "No what?" "No, Jason, I'm not investing. I'm not joining. I'm not lending my name." He set his glass down. "You haven't even seen the plan." "I don't need to." "You're unbelievable," he snapped. "You spend all this time preaching about independence and growth, but when it comes to helping family—" "Helping?" I interrupted. "Or funding another fantasy?" His expression hardened. "You think I'm still that kid chasing quick money? This is different." "It's always different," I said quietly, "until it isn't." His eyes flashed. You've changed, Elias. You used to believe in people. Now you just believe in your bank account. I stood, carrying both glasses back inside. I believe in peace, Jason, and I'm not trading it for another storm. He followed me to this door, anger radiating off him. You think you're better than us now because you have your house, your view, your perfect little life by the ocean? I turned, meeting his glare. No, I just finally learned to live without permission. He stared at me for a long moment, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Then he grabbed the whiskey bottle from the counter. You'll regret this, he said. When I make it big, don't come asking for anything. I won't. He walked out without another word. The sound of his car faded down the hill until there was nothing left but the wind. I stood in the middle of the living room for a while, staring at the half-empty glass on the table, his, still warm from his hand. It hit me then, how predictable the cycle was. Every test I'd passed, every storm I'd endured, always came with a new one, wearing a different face but asking the same question. Will you break again? And for the first time in my life, I didn't. Later that night, I stepped out onto the terrace again. The ocean shimmered under the moonlight, vast and indifferent. I thought about my brother, my sister, my parents, all of us trapped for years, in a house of expectations we never built, but kept trying to live inside. The wind carried the faint sound of waves against the rocks. I let it fill the silence Jason left behind. Maybe that's what growing up really is, realizing that love doesn't always mean connection, and distance doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes walking away is love, the only kind that saves you. I went back inside, turned off the lights, and let the house go quiet again. Outside, the sea kept breathing. Nights in Malibu have a way of swallowing sound. After Jason left, the silence stretched across the rooms like a soft tide, not empty, not lonely, just complete. I sat by the window with a glass of water, watching the dark horizon where the ocean met the stars. Somewhere far out, a ship's light blinked once, then disappeared into the black. For years, I thought peace was something I'd find after everyone stopped demanding pieces of me. But now, sitting here alone, I realized peace wasn't found. It was built, like this house, one wall, one decision, one boundary at a time. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. Your father says he's proud of you. Don't tell him I told you. He'll deny it tomorrow. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I typed back a single heart emoji, the most honest reply I could manage. Then I scrolled through my old messages, the angry ones, the manipulative ones, the ones that used to keep me awake. Deleted them all. Watching them vanish was like exhaling after holding my breath for years. The next morning, I took my coffee onto the terrace. The air was cool, the sun just breaking over the water. Gulls wheeled above the cliffs, their cries sharp and distant. I thought about Melissa, where she was, what she might be saying now that the war she started had gone quiet. I hadn't heard from her in months, but through my mother I knew enough. She'd moved to a smaller town outside Los Angeles, trying to rebuild. My father had sent her some money quietly. I didn't object. Everyone finds peace their own way. Then, as if the thought had summoned it, an envelope arrived. That afternoon. No return address. Inside was a small, folded piece of paper in a child's handwriting. Hi, Uncle Eli. Mommy says we can't see the beach house anymore, but we hope you're happy. We miss you. Love, Oliver and June. A simple message. No bitterness, no blame, just the unfiltered honesty of children. I stood there with the letter in my hands for a long time, the waves murmuring below. The same ocean that had witnessed every argument, every act of defiance, every lonely night. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt, only gratitude. They would grow up one day, and maybe they'd understand that sometimes love isn't opening the door. Sometimes it's keeping it closed so you don't let the rot spread. That evening, the sky turned the color of rust and honey. I cooked dinner, grilled salmon, white wine, nothing fancy. Ate on the terrace, alone but not lonely. As the wind brushed across my face, I thought of all the versions of myself that had lived in this house. The obedient son, the quiet doctor, the reluctant brother, the exhausted man who finally said enough. Each version had died a little so that this one, the man sitting under a burnt orange sky, listening to the ocean's heartbeat, could live freely. My father had once said, "Family doesn't need permission." Maybe he was right, but not in the way he meant. Family doesn't ask for permission to love you, or to hurt you, or to teach you. They just do. And when you survive it all, You become the person who finally learns where love ends and self-respect begins. I stood and walked to the glass railing. Below, the surf rolled in and out, patient as time. The lights of the house reflected faintly on the surface, warm, steady, alive. I made it, I whispered to no one. The ocean didn't answer, but it didn't need to. Its rhythm said everything. I didn't win by defeating them. I won by choosing myself. I didn't build this house to keep them out. I built it to finally live within my own walls. The sea moved, steady and endless, reminding me that freedom isn't silence or distance. It's continuity. The strength to keep going, no matter what's taken or left behind. I raised my glass toward the horizon. To peace, I said. And somewhere deep in that rolling darkness, I swore the waves whispered it back.